Hi, this is Nate House, and you're watching Craft House Media. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Michael Bouchard. Doctor. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about what kind of things have been difficulties that you've overcome, that your project has overcome, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do and where you are.
Sure, yeah. One story that I think really illustrates the lessons of being resilient to failure and adversity comes from an experience I actually had in undergraduate.
Okay.
I went to a small science engineering school in Missouri, Missouri University of Science and Technology, and there we were not known for our sports. You didn't go to this school to excel in sports, but what we did have were these design teams where we would compete in these competitions to build things like solar cars that drive across the country, or canoes made out of concrete, or just interesting design challenges. So this was our Division I sports.
Okay.
And so myself, knowing that I wanted to get into planetary science, which is the study of the geology of other planets, and was interested in how you do that using satellites and rovers and landers, I wanted to build something akin to that. And so I found a university competition called the University Rover Challenge that was hosted in Utah in the summer every year, because it kind of looks like Mars. And the design challenge was to build a rover. And I realized in retrospect, having scoped out and done a couple of these competitions, that it might be one of the most difficult robotics competitions in the world.
Okay.
But I didn't know that going in.
So it's just good. It's good
Yeah,
not to know like just how bad it could be, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it was an exciting challenge. The challenge was to design and build the next generation of Mars rovers. So the ones that are going to be on the surface of Mars with humans.
Okay.
So things you'd have to do would be finding humans, astronauts in the field, delivering tools, manipulating equipment that humans can use, like pushing buttons, flipping switches, very complex, dexterous robotic tasks that we take for granted in our, billions of years of evolutionarily refined robotic manipulators. And then things like doing science experiments, looking for life in the Utah desert, as long with all the regular components you would need on a remote exploration platform. Battery power, power systems, structures, telecommunications, computer hardware, computer software, and pretty robust mobility platforms, suspensions and things. The type of terrains we were driving over were way beyond what we would drive the actual rovers over. Things like slopes of 45 degrees on loose sand, boulders that are 12 inches tall, 1 meter vertical drops, so very challenging terrain. So I got together a group of friends. I was like, we have engineers here, we have scientists here, like we can figure this out.
It's easy, it's science. Anyone can do it.
Right, yeah. It just takes a little curiosity and tenacity to learn the things you need to know.
Okay.
And that's what we really had to do. That entire year preparing for this competition was learning things. None of us had ever built a robot before.
Okay.
None of us, almost no one on campus had ever built a robot this complicated before. And so it was a lot of teaching ourselves, like, well, let's try this, let's learn this, let's do this and fail at doing this. And from every aspect of the organism, from organizing the group to how you divide up tasks to raising $20,000 to $30,000 to pay for this from corporate sponsors, every single aspect to every detail, we were teaching ourselves. The learning curve was like climbing a vertical cliff. But we did it. At the end of our first year, we had a rover.
Okay.
Aluminum, carbon fiber, we had batteries, we had cameras, we had a drill to collect subsurface samples, we had a robotic arm, we had science payloads, we had it all, and we were gonna go to competition, and it was gonna be awesome. We get to competition, and we'd been running behind schedule the entire time, didn't really have time for testing. We were barely making it to there with a rover. And our rover barely moved.
Oh no.
In the entire competition, it probably moved like 4 feet. We had to rewire the entire thing after driving over the Colorado mountains, because my suspicion is we hadn't properly grounded it, and that dry environment had caused shorts, and so we had to rewire the entire thing. We were fixing it between tasks, we were ripping out parts, we were making parts, we were soldering things on the fly, in the van between competition sites, and we took dead last in this competition.
Wow.
15 universities from across the US, several from Poland, several from Europe, other areas, and we took dead last. Barely put any points on the board.
Oh no.
So pretty abject failure for this
Okay.
first rover.
And so you quit. That was the end
We
of
gave
it.
up,
You're
and
like,
that's
no
the
more
lesson.
Science.
Dropped out of school, and here we are. That's what I wanted to talk to you about today.
So how is acting going here in Southern California?
Well, it's great.
So that's not what that wasn't the end of the story, though.
No. So one of the things about this team is that our perspective and our scope and our vision was always larger than the single project. We had a sort of a culture of supportive learning and collaborative work that really led itself to being resilient to this failure.
Yeah.
And I think also, we understood failure as a part of the engineering cycle. You design things, they fail, you redesign them, and you make them better.
Right.
And also that's a good sort of approach in life in general, The failures are the things you learn the most from, if you choose to.
Yes.
And so we did. We went back to the drawing board. We looked at what we did right, a couple things, what we did wrong, a lot of things, and we restructured our whole approach. We'd gotten very good at taking a complex idea and breaking it into small parts,
Okay.
but we hadn't figured out how to reassemble those small parts into a working system. So we adopted systems engineering principles, ways to approach a complex design. We used iterative design cycles. We had reviews with people smarter than us, Boeing engineers, professors, to tell us, what we were doing wrong, what we could do better. And we went back into the year fully loaded and fully excited, and we built a far superior rover the next year. We had laser jetted aluminum. We had carbon fiber composites in much more complex configurations. We had custom printed circuit boards, over 30 custom designed circuit boards that we populated and printed, completely new software for both the rover and the base station. We built a spectrometer from scratch for the science payload. We built our own robotic arm completely from scratch with a ingenious design that John Bope should still patent. And it was just leaps and bounds beyond our first rover. And we went back to competition the next year, and we competed, and we took first place of all the US teams and second place of all the teams that competed, taking second place only to the Polish team of PhD mechatronics students who'd won the last 3 years in a row.
Wow.
So we felt pretty good about that,
Yeah.
that success. And that was not giving up when you first had that failure, learning the lessons, turning it around, and going back to it.
There's certainly something about grit, of staying present in something when it's hard, of allowing yourself to not get it right and then try again and learn, and like allowing learning to take place.
Absolutely. It's a lot of forgiving yourself for not knowing and for not being good at something the first time.
Right.
Things are only I like to think about things as not necessarily being hard, but as being unfamiliar.
Unfamiliar.
Calculus is not a natural act.
No.
No one is born doing calculus. No one walks down the street doing integral. Well, some people do, but we are near Caltech. But most people don't walk down the street doing calculus.
Sample size.
It's a bias.
Yeah.
But these are things that are unfamiliar. And so anything that's unfamiliar is by definition difficult until you become familiar with it. And that can be anything. That can be a musical instrument, that can be a language, that can be a math course, that can be a technical subject. And we may have different aptitudes and different styles of learning, but all of us can improve our aptitude at just about anything by giving ourselves the time to work on it and become familiar with the thing that you want to do.
I see. So, after this team had a successful project, sounds like second in the world, first in America, like, what happened with you? Like, why are you here in Pasadena, California?
Direct result of this team, honestly. One of our commitments of the team was not only to the project, but to our team members. And so a lot of the alumni have gone on to work at awesome places across the country. The team's philosophy can be summed up as sort of 3 points: today, tomorrow, and forever. And so today was everything we focused on to be successful at that competition. All those hours spent designing, breaking, fixing, fundraising, all those day-to-day hours, those plus 40-hour weeks just on the project were specifically for the goal of being successful today at this competition. But tomorrow was our commitment to our team members. that by being a part of the team, they were getting hands-on learning experience, seeing a whole design cycle, getting leadership, communication experience, teamworking experience, hands-on practical engineering and design experience, scientific thinking. And so by participating in the group, we were committed that members of our group would become the innovators and instigators of tomorrow.
Wow.
And then forever was our commitment to something more than just ourselves and the project, but to giving back to science in general, to developing robotic exploration platforms that could further our exploration of the solar system, and being committed to educating the next generation. We do 30 to 40, the team still does about anywhere from 20 to 40 outreach events across Missouri every year.
Wow.
That's not at all necessary to build the rover, but it's important to us to inspire and educate, do workshops, do STEM expos, do talks, do work things for kids to get them excited about science, to teach them engineering, to get them involved. And so my involvement in this team had a direct correlation to what I would end up doing. You know, my involvement in the project got me internships at NASA. My research and work at NASA and this team got me into a PhD program at Washington University, St. Louis, where I studied Martian geology and got to work on the Opportunity rover, an actual rover on Mars, daily making science contributions to its exploration, studying what it was studying, the data it was sending back, making decisions about where we would drive next, how we would operate this rover. And then upon completing the graduate program,
I remember before you graduated, we were hanging out at a cafe in St. Louis, and you were so kind listening to me talk about my studies, and I asked what you were doing, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm analyzing the data on these rock samples," and I'm like, "Wait, the data that's going into making some decisions is being analyzed right here
at this coffee shop in St. Louis
right now." Yeah, that was hilarious.
St. Louis does space stuff.
And so all of this ended up with you finishing your degree, you finished your PhD program, and then what happened?
Getting hired at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena.
What I'm not hearing you explain though is because, and maybe some people don't realize this, it's like that you had to not just do one interview.
Oh yeah, it was upwards of 30 interviews across 5 months.
Yeah.
To get
I guess you're making the story sound like it was just very easy. which I just kind of know because I've heard the story.
Sure.
It's been countless hours.
Oh yeah. This is actually another good point. So the Jet Propulsion Laboratory is NASA's Center for Robotic Exploration. We build most of NASA's robots that go beyond Earth orbit. Not all of them, there's other places that do it, but we are sort of one of the world experts in this. We're one of the only places that has successfully landed on Mars, and we can do it reliably. We monitor and run the Deep Space Network, which is how we talk to anything beyond Mars. We're NASA's go-to robotic explorer builder. And I knew this is where I wanted to go. Like, this was in the vision, in the plan, it was somewhere I wanted to be. It was the happening place for this sort of exploration of the solar system. And I knew that was the goal, and so once you have your goal, you can figure out your path to get there. And so it was a lot of doing internships to get the experience, to build the networks, to make it took me 4 summers to get my first internship at JPL.
Okay.
I failed to get an internship 3 times, but I kept going back.
Yeah.
I was able to convince them to let me in for summer. And then that summer working there, first day in, it was, okay, what's the next internship I'm gonna get next summer? And what is my role? How can I contribute in this environment? Where are my people?
Yeah.
And so that whole summer, while contributing to the 2020 rover, which is gonna launch this summer, really exciting Mars mission, working on that project, I figured out what type of job I could do at JPL, something that would involve the fusion of my science background and my engineering background, systems engineering, planetary science. And I found the people who do both of those and translate between those worlds. And so I networked really hard with them and got to know them and got myself an internship the next summer that proved my systems engineering capability, just doing pure systems engineering, nothing science related. So that when I came back to them, having finished a science PhD, I could say, see, I can do science and I can do engineering, and set myself up to
do them both.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, there's just this lot of, like, I keep hearing you say, like, there was difficulties, there were not setbacks, but like,
sure,
just because you didn't get it the first time doesn't mean that's it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. And I think you mentioned too that even the program as a whole isn't always, I mean, you were saying that not all the launches were, what was it?
Sure, yeah.
Even as a whole, the institution had to learn from what it had done and try again next time.
We mostly talked about my own sort of tiny rover experience, but in the large scale too, NASA has had this experience.
Yeah.
Landing on Mars is really hard. Like really hard.
Who knew?
It's kind of rocket science, I guess.
So you're a rocket scientist.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't build rockets though, and I'm not an aerospace engineer. I'm an assistant. Okay. But just disclaimer. But so we have successfully landed rovers on Mars, and we just landed a stationary platform that's been measuring Mars quakes for the first time. Tens of sort of vibrations that are ringing through Mars, and maybe even a fault zone now that we're discovering.
Wow.
And so we're doing it successfully, and it seems like, oh yeah, we can just do that now. But it's still, it took a lot of time to get to do that. So 2/3 of every mission that has attempted to land on Mars has failed.
Whew.
2/3. That's not a great success rate.
No.
Now, granted, recently our record has been much better
Right.
because we've learned from those failures. But it's only by doing it and failing that you can make those lessons to learn to do it better and adapt.
Right. Because without even trying, I guess that what you started the conversation with, that's part of the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have failure and learn from it.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
And move forward. Yeah.
We're doing things no one has done before, and most of the time you're not going to get that right the first time, and so you have to do it wrong to do it right.
I see. Do you think people in their lives often get so afraid of doing something wrong that they just stop and they don't do anything?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, in my own life too, I feel that fear. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I have this anxiety. I'm not sure I can do this. And
right.
My life has taught me that those are the things I need to lean into.
Okay.
Those things that I feel uncomfortable about, those decisions that I'm hesitating making, if I take back and analyze them and be like, why am I not? I know this is something I want to do. I know this is something that I want to have accomplished, but why am I not just doing it? Uh-huh. It's that sort of fear of failure, but that's where I know I will grow the most.
Yes.
And so that's when once I make that realization, I know that's what I have to do.
Wow.
If I'm having that anxiety of that step, that next, that move, that activity, that signing up for that competition, whatever it is, it's when I make that realization that almost is confirmation to me that I have to do it. Because I know even if I fail, that's where I'm going to grow the most and learn the most and develop the most.
Well, how exciting. Yeah, just so, I think it's always fun when you meet someone who is making that effort to consciously seek out those things that they are afraid of and do it anyway, and take the next step and push themselves to grow and I remember when I met you, you said, I have a 15-year plan. I don't think any of us have a 15 It's like, oh my God. So but I was just, what an ingenious way of looking at what you want to accomplish, setting goals for yourself on how you want to accomplish those, allowing for failure and setback to be part of the learning process, and making steps anyway. That's so cool. Is there any advice that you would have for people that are interested in science or interested in the Jet Propulsion Labs or
Sure.
NASA? I think there's so many people that they believe that this is just so far out of their world or so far out of their reach that I'll never get there.
Yeah. I guess the advice I would have is don't count yourself out.
Okay.
And if it's something you really want to do, then try. I would much rather have tried and failed than have not tried at all. There's a really great quote. I have an example and a quote. Maybe we'll do the example and end with the quote.
Okay.
The example is a musician, a rock musician. Mm-hmm. He has a band. I don't know, maybe not super successful, but he tours, he makes money, mm-hmm. He's got a band, alligator boots, over his hair, and he's a musician and makes things. But he also has a passion for exploration and rockets and aerospace engineering. So he goes to school and he studies and he learns engineering and he gets jobs and he gets better at it and he gets really good at it and he gets hired at JPL. And he is now one of the sort of legends of Mars exploration. He's the one who was sort of led the team that came up with the sky crane maneuver. So 2012, we had to land the heaviest thing we've ever landed on Mars.
Okay.
Landing on Mars was already really hard, and we were going to land a rover the size of a car that weighed over a ton. Incredibly large, incredibly heavy, very difficult to land. And so the mechanism they came up with for landing involved coming through the atmosphere in a aeroshell, kind of like a gumdrop, burning through that atmosphere, using a couple parachutes to slow you down a little bit. But because Mars's atmosphere is so thin, about 1% as thick as our atmosphere at...
That's not good.
No, yeah, so it's just enough atmosphere you need to worry about it and aerodynamics and heating, but not enough to really slow you down like the Earth. You've got this nice juicy atmosphere, you can throw out parachutes for days and just slow yourself down. So it's just enough to cause problems and not enough to help. Okay. So after you get through that atmosphere, you throw away the heat shield, you release the parachutes in the back shell, and then you have your rover that's wearing basically a jetpack, and it fires its rockets to slow it down to a descendable area. Then it lowers the rover on a cable, pops out its wheels, sets the rover down on the ground, cuts the cable, and your rover has been delivered to the surface.
I had no idea.
You look up videos, it's incredible, the sky crane maneuver. And when he first proposed it, he was almost laughed out of the room, like, that's too complex, like, no way all those things will go right. But the engineers went back to the drawing board and they're like, well, we can't think of any other better way to get this very heavy thing to the surface. So they tried it, and they used the JPL approach, which involves incredible amounts of testing, basically making your mission fail before you launch it, so you know what to do to fix it before it gets there, because you only get one shot. And it succeeded.
Wow.
And the Curiosity rover is still exploring today, making incredible discoveries about an ancient lake on Mars that had ancient organics, that had mudstones, and shows about this sort of perfect environment for where life could have been 3 billion years ago. And he's a rock star.
Yeah.
Still wears the gator skin cowboy boots and the Elvis hair.
You can wear whatever you want.
That's right, yeah, yeah. That's the example. And the quote I would use is actually a quote from Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay.
And the last director of JPL, Charles Alachi, very well respected, sort of had a big impact on the lab. He took a portion of this quote and he made it the sort of motto of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Okay.
I could try and paraphrase it, but I also have the power of technology.
We've got time. We've got plenty of time.
And by the power of editing. Or not. This quote. So this is a Theodore Roosevelt quote, who had an incredible life of failures and overcoming failures and successes throughout his life. Far better is it to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. And those 3 words, dare mighty things, is all over JPL.
Wow.
It's become the unofficial motto, and it encapsulates what we do. But it's also a great personal motto. Dare mighty things, do the hard thing, try the thing you're afraid of.
Yeah.
Because better to have tried and grown than to sort of not have tried. And
live in the twilight of neither victory nor defeat. Yeah. Huh. What a great motto. I wish you all the best with your future successes and failures.
Yes.
And more successes.
Yes. 2 more failures, and then more successes, and then more failures.
I like it. I like it. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure anyone that hears this will be inspired to also dare greatly, dare mighty things.
Dare mighty things.
Dare mighty things. Thank you so much.
Sure. If you enjoy these thoughtful analyses about life and decisions and mental health and everything that Craft House Media does so well, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell us something that you've dared, something that you have tried and failed at, something that you are trying right now or will try. You know, it's the start of a new year, a great time to sort of maybe set some of those mighty goals.
And if people have questions about the Jet Propulsion Lab, we
Sure.
can leave a link for that
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. Make some comments, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Very cool. Thank you again.
Yeah.